Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
All right, welcome back to the show. We've got a great guest for you today. We have Craig Speck, and he's a 25-year expert and authority in the field of ground transportation for groups. He's also the president and founder and national CEO of Speck Transportation Services, and it's a Christian-owned and operated transportation consultant to churches, schools, corporations, and government agencies. And Craig is famous for his 60-second marketing rap, which delights his customers and the multiple youth pastor conventions he exhibits at. So he's headquartered here in Texas, and his company was founded 13 years ago. And Speck Transportation was the first broker and consultant to create an extremely rigorous screening process for suppliers and the first to offer a 200% guarantee to his clients. And his company provides chartered coaches, passenger van rentals, school buses with drivers, and limos nationwide. He's also an author and speaker. So welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Tracy. It's an honor, and I'm really glad to be able to provide helpful information to your listeners. The ground transportation field is loaded with sharks, and I know how to swim with them.
There you go. Well, that's a unique niche, and everybody, at some point needs your services. So this is perfect timing as far as the economy, and people, might be traveling this summer and wanting to rent vehicles and things like that. So tell us exactly what types of customers that you serve and describe those clients for us.
Client base consists of churches, schools, corporations, nonprofits, government agencies. We work with any traveling group that needs ground transportation with and without drivers. We also help a number of individuals, but mostly since we're the Sam's Club or Costco out there in four main categories as a volume buyer and an independent rep for 40 ground transportation carriers that have been through our rigorous screening process. We provide, everything from small car rentals up to big motor coaches, but mostly vans, motor coaches, school buses, and, as you mentioned, limousines. Okay. So our ideal client is someone who's looking for an expert to work with them, that wants the company wants that expert or authority like myself to handle everything from the initial call to being there for them when they're on the road, and even checking in with them to see how things are going, not only during the trip but after it's done. We're a full service broker and consultant.
Perfect. So you mentioned initially that there's a lot of sharks in the industry, and so what is it that you take people through for your rigorous selection? What's that entail?
Well, I've developed. It's called my Spectacular Coach Supplier Selection Process, and it's 10.5 very strict internal criteria that I use to rigorously screen a carrier before they come into our transportation network. Mm-hmm. Tracy, if you've ever seen a gauntlet on TV or someone being initiated into a gang, right, it's easier for a supplier to go through that than it is to get into my network. That's awesome. And so that's a very dramatic way of expressing it, but I'm really strict about who I work with. One of those things is a motor coach carrier has to have $5 million of liability insurance to even operate legally. Mm. Well, my screening system allows me to consistently check on them to make sure not only that they have the proper insurance, that their Department of Transportation number is still active, also that their driver and mechanical violations are within a reasonable limitation, and that they have no fatal crashes on their record, no injury crashes, within the last 2 years. And if a carrier has an injury crash, I have to know, what it's about, what the circumstances are. For example, I had a carrier that was going through the toll booth in one of their minibuses, and a police car rear-ended them. The prisoner that was in the back seat hit his head on the cage. Well, they they slapped them with that carrier with a 2-year injury crash because of that. So, and that can stay on the record up to 2 years. So if I know the circumstances, I do allow one within a 24-month period. But as I said, I'm very strict, and I screen them internally so they don't even know how they're being screened.
Perfect. I've seen horror stories on television where some of these companies, fly-by-night operators and bus drivers that aren't even legally to be in the United States, I don't think. But, yeah, you have to be careful with selecting those companies. So that's a great program you have there. So, Craig, how did you get involved in this field, and how did you get started?
In November 2nd of 2001, I was working for a small van rental company, driving from Arlington to Mesquite every day, about 100 miles. The owner of the company was doing some things, lying to customers and doing a few other things that I could see were going to cause the business to fail. So on the night of November 1st, actually, God gave me a vision that I would, take this business and work from home, and I would represent multiple suppliers, including the one I was already with for a while longer. And I talked to my boss the next day, presented my plan, turned in my company car, said keep my salary, turned in my gas card, and I walked off the job on Friday and started this on a Monday, and that's 14 and a half years ago. And I started keeping my own database a year before, and I began sending out emails, and we were off and running. And before I knew it, I'm up to 40 ground transportation suppliers nationwide and all their affiliates. So it's,
nice.
I created the company so I could be in the client's corner, remove their hassles and legwork, keep them safe, and help them achieve the best overall value package, the optimal overall value package. Give them world-class service and give them, a consistent positive outcome each time they rented.
Perfect. Well, I love that. That you're an advocate for the consumer, and that's very rare in the marketplace. So congratulations
on
that.
Thank you.
What along the way, Craig, I know I love asking this question to entrepreneurs as far as their journey. What impacted you along the way? Was there a book or a person that impacted you? I know you're a Christian, but tell me a little bit about what inspired you.
Besides God giving me the vision to start the company, and I have, believed from day one throughout the 14 and a half years that I've owned it, that he's the owner and I'm just the manager.
There you go.
So, the Bible and, different, the mentors that I've had over the years, probably started out with a guy by the name of Jeffrey Gitomer, Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins. I use Tom Hopkins' thank you notes every day. I mean, so, a little bit here, my business coach, Mike Crow, who wrote the foreword to my books, Dan Kennedy, who is the head of Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle, business owners group that I'm in, Susan Hamilton, I've constantly, over the last 14 and a half years plus, I've, built up my library. And so I have a lot of different mentors that, I pull their reference books from time to time. And my wife's often accused me of spending more time studying business than reading the Bible, and that may be true because, if we have a successful business and it can fuel success in other areas, not putting it first, but just making sure that you have the knowledge and the wisdom as an entrepreneur to keep going and to be able to turn on a dime and stay abreast of all the changes. There's just so many hats we wear as an entrepreneur. Our life is simultaneous, not sequential. So.
There you go. Beautiful. Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Sure.
So what helps you get out of bed or makes you get out of bed every morning and do what you do and gives you the passion to help the people that you're helping?
I think number one is that, I love what I do. Two, it's so diversified. It's never any one thing the same day. I love overcoming the challenges of helping clients find, safe, reliable, cost-effective transportation for their groups, and knowing that whatever supplier I place them with, that 99.9% of the time it's going to turn out great for them. You know, I know that they're not going to be, the most dangerous thing that a client does is driving down the road in vans, coaches, and school buses with their youth group or with their, school team or debate team. And all it takes is just one mistake to ruin it all. So part of my passion about keeping groups safe is what, gets me out of bed in the morning. Besides my family, I've been married for 24 years to my wife, Renee, actually on May 16th. And I have a, 13-year-old son, and, getting up with them and seeing them get off to where they need to go. My wife works with me in the business part-time. And as we're getting busier, I'm hoping that'll be full-time soon. And, my boys at Fellowship Academy in Kennedale, he plays, basketball and track, and he's running track now, and he played football in the fall. So, just a lot of good things happening, the Lord blessing the business, and just, now being the author of 2 books to show groups how to travel safely and stay out of scams, crashes, and lawsuits, have absolute confidence in their decisions for the group, and just basically avoid being reprimanded or fired for making a stupid decision.
Sure.
Just a lot of things, I believe that, I need to serve God every day in my business and proclaim the name of Jesus. I do pray for clients on the phone about different things. You won't find too many business owners today that'll, pray with a client over the phone, and I've been able to, and I don't do it because it's a sales type thing. I do it because my heart is in providing not only a company service, but to touch their lives, going beyond just the transaction.
Sure.
My job is to leave everybody off better than when I met them.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that with us. That's very
absolutely
very honorable. What do you find to be the biggest misconception that people have when they have to, rent a van or a coach or a limousine? What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you're finding?
Well, what a lot of people have got, what many people have got to get a grip on that are buyers of this type of service is that they've got to do their homework. What happens with many churches is that when the larger they are, especially, they'll decentralize their purchasing. And what's dangerous is they've got a lot of 19 to 20-year-olds that are, just throwing that age group out there for that example, that are out there and they're seeking transportation quotes, but they know nothing about the companies that they're working with, and they don't understand the small things that they have to do so that the big negative things don't hit them in a hard way. As I mentioned, simple stuff like making sure that, the carrier has a certificate of insurance in hand for the proper amount before you even let your group step into a vehicle. That's paramount, that you have that certificate of insurance on any vehicle with the driver. And it's as if this is an area that has been just completely ignored by anyone in my industry on educating the client how to do it right, how to keep themselves from getting in a sling or getting eaten by a shark, because there are many companies out there that are outside of my network that will, you take limousine companies. There's a number of unscrupulous ones out there that'll they'll have one limousine in the fleet. They'll take a job, and then when a more expensive job comes along, they'll cancel the other one and leave them holding the bag, or they'll try to do both jobs crossing up with each other, and they'll have the first group stuff in the limo while they're going to pick up the second group, and so stuff disappears. I mean, it's just small things like knowing. When you pick up a 15-passenger van, you've got to inspect it like you own it, because the rental agents are trained on the return end to be very aggressive about finding damage, but it's your job going out to inspect the vehicle properly.
Uh-huh.
So that when the van's returned, you don't have to pay for damages that you didn't cause or create. There's just my books teach teach so much to the client about doing it right.
So can you share with us an example of how you've helped some of these clients, overcome some of these challenges or avoid them?
Absolutely. Multiple situations that have arisen. I had it's funny, I had a client that a few years ago that actually had rented a van. I'm the largest independent rep and volume buyer from Enterprise Rent-A-Car in the nation for 15 passenger vans going with unlimited miles going anywhere. And this client, before he had even met me, had rented a van from Enterprise and was overcharged about $500. Mm-hmm. He had spent about a year trying to go back to them and get some kind of recourse or refund, going all the way up the chain. I made one phone call and in one day got him his $500. Another situation that occurred, I had a youth pastor been with me a long time on Sunday who I'd set up a van for, and he had to go to one of the Enterprise airport locations. Well, the locations at the airport, Tracy, have a different rule about debit cards, and he was using a debit card instead of a credit card. So he got there, and they wouldn't accept the debit card. Well, he called me on a Sunday while I was with my family, and I answered the call, and I made one phone call to an area manager who overrode the manager at that location, and he was able to get that van. I mean, I have the purchasing power, and I'll say this, that most of the Enterprise managers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, including know who I am, and I don't know most of them.
Wow. So
when my name is on a project, my suppliers are all over about taking care of the client and treating them like gold or platinum.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a couple of the ways. And I my books teach the proper way to inspect vans, certain things that you shouldn't do. The number one thing that people take into a motor coach or a van that they shouldn't is sand from the beach. What happens is those little granules of sand get into the carpet, and they have to, the vacuum cleaners that the rental companies use won't pick up that stuff, so they have to send it out, and to a company that has these high-powered vacuum cleaners. And so they charge you for that, and then they charge you for the loss of use time at an inflated rate as well.
Wow.
I teach clients to inspect the roof on the 15 passenger van very carefully because it's the most expensive part of the van. It takes 30 days to replace, and you can run up an additional $6,000 just being charged loss of use fees at the $200 a day, which is normal, double the normal rate when they rent the van on a daily basis.
Wow. That's amazing. I never would have thought of that. That's good information.
Yeah, and that's what most people say when they read my books or they met me. I never even considered that I should get up on the roof. And I have a saying, never allow the spare tire. Most men have this problem, not women. Never allow the spare tire around your waist to keep you from bending down and looking at the spare tire underneath the van.
Every in this rush society, everybody's in a hurry and they just want to get to the transaction, but those could be costly mistakes if you don't follow through with those things. So
absolutely, and that's the problem with most folks. They are in too much of a hurry, and that's why they need an expert like me that's got systems in place to protect them from all of the scams that are out there.
So you've talked about some important things about, renting vehicles and so forth, but what would be your best piece of advice to somebody who's thinking about contracting for some kind of a transportation?
Number one would be to work with an expert like myself, of course. I guess number two, if you're doing it on your own, don't let your group go into any vehicle that comes with a driver without the proper certificate of insurance in your hand and verified over the telephone. Because a carrier can send you a certificate of insurance that looks valid, but it could have been canceled. If it's a motor coach carrier, they could have dropped down to $4 million. I fired one time when I caught them. And, boy, the reaction of the owner was, how did you know that? Hey, you lied to me once, we're done, my screening process just eliminates all that. But, I would say take your time, and don't get in a hurry with this process, because my number one piece of advice I'd say, without rambling on, would be never sacrifice the quality of your group transportation based on the investment alone. Consider all the factors. Consider the age of the fleet. It's important to go down and see the vehicles and look at them. Of course, that's what I do for my suppliers. I do go and I view the fleets of the carriers I represent. I have a meal with them. I talk about their philosophy and mine of customer service, and it's got to at least be equal to mine. Mm-hmm. And so, because our standards are very, very high. But, never sacrificing the quality of the ground transportation and safety for just the investment alone. I mean, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, that's great advice. And
thank you.
Thank you again for sharing that. So if the listeners ready to find out more about how you can help them, what would be the best way to do that?
Well, the number one way to be contact us by phone at 817-477-3003 or 817-437-8702. My website is speckgroundtransportation.com. That's SPECK, speckgroundtransportation.com. They can also contact us there. We have a form they can complete. I also have a couple of forms for vehicles with and without drivers that a client can complete. And it gives me all the information when they send it to me the first time. So it cuts out going back and forth between 7 to 10 emails, and we're able to respond faster to clients that, complete the forms, or at least give us we never provide quotes without a phone number, but we try to respond very, very quickly. We're trying to work on our systems to speed up our response time to clients. But those are the main ways to get a hold of us. I am on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm out there. I'm on Google. So I mean, you can find me. And obviously the now being the author of the two books, I'd be glad to send a copy of either one of my books to anyone who requests one.
Okay. How can they request one?
They can just give me a call, at 817-477-3003. They can email me at craig@speckgroundtransportation.com. So just multiple ways that they can reach me. My two books are called, the first one that I published 2 years ago, The Ultimate Common Sense Group Transportation Guide for Churches and Schools, How to Learn Not to Crash and Burn. And the second book published 2 months ago is The Ultimate Common Sense Ground Transportation Guide for Traveling Groups, How to Learn Not to Crash and Burn, number 2. So those are available upon request.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on authoring those two books for sure. And
thank you. They are the only ones in the industry that I'm aware of. I did quite a bit of research to see if anybody had, was doing anything in this area. I mean, just yesterday there was a bus crash in Ennis where a limousine company tried to take one of their mini coaches under a bridge that was too low. It was absolutely idiotic, but 8 people were injured, and they were senior adults. Unfortunately, it was not one of mine. We have been crash-free for 27 years. So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, again, thank you for the honor to be able to interview you. You're offering a great service, and you definitely relieve a pain in the marketplace for people that need your services. So thank you very much again.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. Well, there you have it for this edition of the show. We'll see you the next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.